Hello everyone, my name is Trevor Whitkey. I grew up here in Calaveras County. I want to say thank you to the Farmers Bureau and to the Cattleman Association and for all of you coming out to attend tonight. So, like I mentioned, my name is Trevor Whitkey. I'm running for District 2 Supervisor. I grew up here in Calaveras. I actually grew up out on Hopper Road in Lynn Norfolk's and Eloise Fisher's house. So, as a kid, when I grew up out here, I spent most of my time out on Hopper Road. I was actually homeschooled, so pretty much all of my time was spent out on Hopper Road, walking back and forth on that road. It was funny, when my mom, when we were renting, asked one day if we could fix the fences to keep the cattle out. Lynn informed us that we were the cattle's guest, and so they would not be fixing. So we learned very quickly that we were the cattle's guests, and we enjoyed the opportunity to live out there. We had the apple trees, we lived in the old homestead there, and it was some of the best time of my life. I enjoyed the creek there. I understood the reason why people built their houses the way that they used to build their houses, because you could stay cool there until about 4 in the afternoon, no matter how hot it was. So people definitely understood the land and how to build out here and how to live off the land, and I appreciated that and the opportunity to live there and learn from you. So thank you. Now, as many of you know, I'm not a rancher and I'm not a farmer, and I've done some heavy gardening in the past. I was the executive director of the Calaveras Cannabis Alliance for a while, and so we've been ag adjacent, but I don't want anybody to be under any impression that I think that I'm a farmer or that I'm a rancher. I know everything that all of you have had to go through over the years in how you've had to conduct your business. This county is, as all of you know, agriculture is the backbone of this community, and as the board of supervisor and a member of the board, I believe that there are a number of things that we could do to try and help the agricultural community, and if I were elected, things that I would do to pursue the interests of agriculture. Specifically, the board of supervisors can adopt a comprehensive strategy to support local agricultural production from the ground up. We have to support the efforts of the Farm Bureau and everybody else promoting the next generation of agricultural leaders and teaching our kids the importance of the agricultural traditions that we have here. I know that a lot of you do this work through 4-H, FFA. I know some of the candidates support this work as well, and that's very important work that we do here. I know that Ag Day is something that all of you support, and that there's also the scholarships that are helping our youth get into the agricultural profession and continue these traditions. So that's something as supervisor I would support. Additionally, I know the importance of zoning and land use. I know the zoning ordinance update is happening right now, and a number of the general plan implementation programs that are mentioned in these questions are important to all of you, and are the places where we can focus our energies to help support the agricultural community.
That's time.
That's time. Thank you.
Good evening. I want to thank Farm Bureau and Cattlemen's Association for organizing this event, my worthy opponents for keeping me sharp, and you, the public, for attending and making it all worthwhile. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm Michelle Turner and I'm running for District 2 Supervisor. Experience matters. Shortly after moving to Calaveras County in 2009, I ran for the Board of Directors of the San Andreas Sanitary District. I knew the district did not adequately serve their customers, and with my background in water quality, engineering, and accounting, I knew I could make a difference. I was elected in December 2011. Since then, I have worked with staff, management, and the board to reduce expenses, increase efficiencies, and serve the public conscientiously. I would like to tell you about all the improvements made since I've been a director, but it would use up my allotted time, so I'll just highlight 2 items. First, the district has aggressively pursued grants and low-cost loans to pay for needed infrastructure. This allows costs for both current and future ratepayers to be minimized. We raised $6 million for the most recent plant upgrade and over $5 million for recent collection system maintenance and upgrades. Second, the district restructured the fee schedule in 2017, which resulted in approximately a 5% reduction in monthly residential fees. That's right, the sewer bill went down. Now, with a comprehensive plan, a strong management team, and dedicated staff, the San Andreas Sanitary District is well positioned for the future, and I'm ready to expand my scope. Experience matters. I managed a $7 million budget while serving as the fiscal and administrative supervisor for Amador County Behavioral Health. And in 2019, I managed $12 million in grant revenue for community medical centers, a federally qualified health center. Currently, I'm the Deputy Air Pollution Control Officer for Calaveras County. I'm responsible for overseeing and administering air quality permitting, burn permits, and several grant programs, including the Wood Smoke Reduction Program, which helps offset the cost of replacing old, dirty wood stoves with cleaner, more efficient devices. Experience matters. I love Calaveras County, and I can't imagine living anywhere else, but we have issues. Roads in poor condition, an unreliable electric grid, long response times to emergency calls, homelessness, mental health challenges, housing shortages, limited employment opportunities, just to name a few. Addressing these issues requires strategic planning, community involvement, and sustainable revenues. Taking action without understanding can lead to unintended consequences that create problems that are more complex and intransigent than the original issue being addressed. It's crucial to ask the right questions to get at workable solutions. Everything costs money. Recruitment and retention of quality staff are expensive. Infrastructure costs are skyrocketing. Implementing programs requires time and money. We need to find ways to sustainably increase our revenue streams without adversely affecting the character of our communities. And while we're at it, we need to make sure the money we are spending is doing what we want it to do. Careful review of the budget and the many contracts needed to implement county goals is a necessity. So what makes me the right candidate?
That's time.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Gary Toffanelli. I was first elected to the board. I'm an incumbent, and I first elected to the board in 2009 and served through 2012. During that time, the big issue was the recession that was going on and what was being done by the state. Everybody thinks, I'll be very frank, everybody thinks when you write, not everybody, most people think that when you write your check to pay your property taxes, you write it to the treasurer or the tax collector of Calaveras County and the county gets that money. That's not true. All of the money except for bond money or special district money is turned over to the state. And then the state returns money to us once in June and once in December. And they are supposed to return 17% to us, around 17%. Back then, they were giving us 12%. They were giving us 13%. We weren't getting the dollars that we were supposed to be getting back, and we had to deal with that. And so it was a very difficult time when I first got on the board. Then I was re-elected in 2017, and we had the cannabis thing going on. So that was a very difficult time. That lasted for a couple of years. And we're headed into, right now, another situation where we have Title 17. We got that done with the general plan. All the parcels have been zoned. But now the time comes with Title 17 is what you can do on your property within that zone. And a couple of questions have to do with that that we're going to be dealing with tonight. But that's an issue that's right now in the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission will go through that, and what their recommendations they have will come to the board for us to consider and look at and decide on. That's a big item coming because it affects everybody that owns property here in the county. It's a big issue. So you need to pay attention to that when it comes to the board, or even right now, if you want to go to a planning commission meeting, they meet on Thursdays, every other Thursday, and bring in to them what you feel you should be able to do on your property, because that's going to change. A lot of it's going to be changed because it hasn't been changed in a long time. That's coming to the board. Again, right now, the state has what the governor says is a $38 billion deficit. They have to fix that deficit. And it's much like when I said about when I first got elected in 2009 in the recession. They've already told the school districts that they're not going to give them the full funding at the school district. I assume at the county level, we won't know until May, but I assume if they don't find any other way to reduce that deficit, they're going to come back what they did in 2009, 10, 11, and reduce the amount of money coming back to the county. That's going to be a big issue because back then we had to lay people off and we had to really reduce a lot of the departments in order to have funding to do it.
That's time.
So that's a big issue coming forward, how we're going to
that's time.
Thank you.
Good evening, I'm Cheryl McEwen Harper of Wilseyville and running for District 2 Supervisor. I'm very grateful to be here with all of you tonight. The people of this state do not yield their sovereignty to the agencies which serve them. The people in delegating authority do not give their public servants the right to decide what is good for them to know and what is not good for them to know. The people insist on remaining informed so they may retain control over the instruments they have created. The people insist on remaining informed. If elected, expect normalizing video summaries of the Board of Supervisors meetings, links, slideshows, and how you can be heard. Broadband is coming through a grant from the state. It includes smart city technology, and the opportunity to oppose this is closed. If elected, I can't change the world, but I can provide you with the information to change the world that affects you. Good information helps us make good decisions together. Our county officials have forgotten they work for the people. I'm a concerned, long-term, outspoken resident who will get our voices back. I'm tired of feeling that's just the way it is. There's nothing we can do. How about you? Together, I know we can do better, and that's why I'm running for supervisor. Put my decades of accounting knowledge and experience to work for you as a talented eye in the financial management of our county that is sorely needed to represent the residents with whom the county has lost touch. Boldly asking questions is my superpower. Using this talent for financial accountability, transparency, freedom from conflicts of interest or corruption is my primary goal. I will stay engaged with my community and keep us informed. With good information, we can make good decisions and generate revenue while maintaining our treasured rural history together. It is the efforts of many that create the ripples that can move mountains. For this audience, I bring to the table for discussion these items. Invisible interior livestock fencing was presented by the University of California crossover extension in a slideshow to the board in January. The state's plan to require reporting of your water usage from your ponds and wells, for which many of you have probably received letters and tossed them. And most critically, the conservation easements offered by the USDA under the guise of saving you money on property taxes and more. A newly created investment class called natural asset companies have created easements that risk restriction and hijacking of your property rights, stopping you from being able to pass them down to your children. I've brought some printouts of the article on this plan's effort to control our land resources for your review. I would be honored to speak with you on any of these subjects and deeply grateful if you would support my campaign, get me elected to help us protect our communities. And just so you know, I married a stubborn old cowboy named Wiley Wade Harper, so there you go. Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you for organizing this event and inviting us all to be here. It's really important to share ideas and get to know each other. My name is Anna Grace Gates, and I'm running for District 1 Supervisor. In 1943, my grandparents, Helen and Cecil Uglow, came here. My grandpa got a job at the copper mine in Copperopolis, and that started a long history in this county. He ended up in 1946 getting a job as a county, state, and federal trapper at the same time. Don't exactly know how that paperwork turned out, but I grew up around cattle, turkeys, skinning coyotes, and hearing stories of the old days. I always wanted my mom to bring me to Calaveras County because some of our best friends lived here, and they had my favorite oak trees. In 2000, I got a job at the Resource Connection. It was then called Calaveras Women's Crisis Center. It's now called Calaveras Crisis Center here in San Andreas. And I was introduced to this wonderful rural community, which is so much like the Tuolumne County that I grew up in and that I love and am so proud of. I met my wonderful, handsome husband, and we got married and had 4 kids. When I married him, I inherited some grapes, and we own a small winery and a vineyard here in town, and that has been a crash course in all things growing, the ranching side, the growing side. I'm running because I'm tired of we've always. I think this is the most amazing county, and I've been so blessed to raise my kids here, to work here as a special education teacher, to work at the fairgrounds, to tutor, to be a part of this, and we've always gets us stuck. And we need to look at the problems we have and get them off the to-do list. We need to look for new solutions because this county has so much to offer. We're here on purpose. We're here because we like the rural lifestyle that this place offers. And that is because people like you are here maintaining this lifestyle. People move from the city here and they commute. And because they want their kids to grow up here. Because that is important. Communication is important to me. I agree with what Cheryl said. Transparency is of the utmost importance. And when I was knocking on doors, that's what I heard. I don't know what's happening. So thank you for being here tonight, and I appreciate your time.
Good evening. I'm Autumn Andal. I'm a candidate for District 2 Calaveras Supervisor. Thank you all for being here tonight. Thank you all for hosting. I'm running because I have a deep love, a sense of pride, and an understanding of our traditions and our values. I'm running because I have a vision to strengthen all communities of D2, to bring the residents together to achieve goals and improve our communities through cooperation, collaboration, and hard work. You will notice tonight, and moving forward, I do not talk a whole lot like the politician. I will never promise to fix everything that is broken. I will not pretend to be knowledgeable in all aspects. I do promise to be honest, authentic, transparent, and always available to you. I do promise that if you ask me a question I do not know, I will learn it and I will circle back with you. I do promise to be strong and even-handed leader for all of D2. I will work to ensure that all D2 communities always have a seat at the table. For those that don't know me, I am the third generation to live on my family ranch. We are directly between Railroad Flat, McColmy Hill, and Mountain Ranch, which I believe is right in the center of D2. We're blessed to live there. We raise our own livestock, we grow our own food, our children participate with us. My husband works for CAL FIRE as a prevention captain. Our children go to Calaveras High School, Toyon Middle School, and McColmy Hill Elementary School. And they are a lot of why I'm running, so that our area is a home they will continue to love and all of your children will continue to love. We need to sustain our ways of life and ensure that it holds for the future. I am currently an employee of Calaveras County in the First 5, a division of Health and Human Services. I've loved working for the county the last couple of years. It's given me a lot of insight into how it works, how the departments function, and how we can better serve our population. In addition to my current employment, I have years of time working as a volunteer. Lots of boots on the ground, primarily in D2. I hope that my years of experience shows working, volunteering, advocating, and living presently in this community demonstrate my dedication, my understanding, and my commitment to Calaveras County. A candidate like myself with years of boots on the ground experience, in my opinion, is exactly what the Board of Supervisors need. Thank you.
Thank you all for your introductions, and we'll start with we'll start with question KV number 12. Number 1, I got 3 minutes to do that, please.
I'll read the question really quickly.
Not read it if you want. Or, yeah, I'll read it. There's been an interest in opening a needed cut and wrap facility processing in Calaveras County. What would you do to assist in easing the burden of the permitting process for this business?
So yes, this is something I have talked about in my platform, so I appreciate you giving me this question. The USDA slaughter facilities is a project that people have been talking about and working on for basically 20 years now. And so there's a lot of environmental regulations and federal regulations that have held up the program. And what I would do is bring my experience in dealing with local land use regulations, local CEQA environmental regulations to try and help facilitate this process. I would also work with partners who are already working on it. I know tonight there's a meeting over in Tuolumne County right now where they're talking to stakeholders about the siting a facility, and so that's something that I would do. I would continue to work with the people who are already working on this program, Amanda Follendorf and others. Through discussions I've had with people, it sounds like it's going to be about a 5 to 7 year process to actually get through the grant writing, the planning, the grant writing, the siting and building of a facility. So it's not something that's going to happen overnight, but it's something that we have to work on. And as supervisor, I would do everything I can to support that effort and work with the people who are already putting the work in. I know that zoning's a big issue, making sure that we have zoning that permits this type of land use, that deals with the neighbor issues, creating buffer zones around agricultural lands so that agricultural lands don't get impeded by subdivisions, and land use concerns of neighbors is something that I would support. And I also would support just navigating the environmental regulations that we have to get through and all the hurdles to make it so that we actually get this project done.
Thank you. Michelle, we'll have you do number 5, as I gave you. What is your position on the greenhouse gas reduction plan pertaining to the possibility of solar use easements, installations affecting the Williamson Act contracts, amending zone codes to encourage incorporation of alternative energy?
Well, I'll say right now that I do not know all the details of this plan and what they're specifically saying, but my concern is that these solar easements could create problems where landowners are not adequately protected, and solar companies that want to come in and take advantage of this aren't going to be paying their way, essentially. I think if what we're talking about is incorporation of alternative energy, I'm all for it, but I think the primary concern is that the property owner needs to be protected, and whatever agricultural activities are going on that land need to protect it as well. So that is my concern about the solar easements.
Thank you. Gary, I'll give you number 1. November 7, 2023, draft Oak Woodland Ordinance was publicly released. The Board of Supervisors has requested the Planning Commission present them to a final draft. When the Planning Commission presents the final draft, it will be moved to the Board of Supervisors agenda for approval vote. What's your position on how this ordinance would affect individuals' property rights?
Thank you. First, I want to clarify something here. What the Planning Commission final draft will come to the Board of Supervisors. But we do have the right to amend it. We don't have to just accept what they give us. We have the right to talk about it. We have the right to amend it. We have the right to make recommendations and send it back to them for them to review it again with our recommendations to bring it back. Or we can accept it the way it is. It's going to be a very tough situation when that ordinance does finally come to us for us to talk about, because it will affect people. A lot of it has to do with if you own a large piece of property and you want to develop it for housing or commercial or whatever, and you have oak trees on it or hardwoods on it, and you want to remove those hardwoods in order to clear it out, and what mitigations you need to do in order to do that. And also, not so much if you have a hardwood tree that a windstorm got blown over and you need to cut it up. That's not going to affect a whole lot like that. But it will be interesting what the finalized draft comes to us from the Planning Commission, because again, if you have interest in it, you need to go to the Planning Commission and give them your thoughts on it so they can take that into their part of what they're going to finalize with the draft. But I can't wait to see it and then go over it and then give my opinions on it. I know it will affect some people, and some Farm Bureau and Cattleman, it could affect you too, but I haven't seen what the final draft says in order to give you a real comment. If I'd seen it and it was before the board right now, I could give you more information on it. But I don't know what they're doing. I try and stay out of them. My planning commissioner and I don't talk on a whole lot of things, but I give him the freedom to do whatever he feels he wants to do. Because finally, those type of things will eventually come to the board for our opinions and what we agree on and don't agree on.
Thank you, Grant. Okay, Cheryl, number 2 is your question. Water is a concern for everybody. How would you ensure that neighbors are not affected by the permitting of multiple wells on the same site, like next door neighbor? If there's anything in the current practice, would you try to fix it?
Thank you. Well, I think one of the first things that I would do is what I did tonight, is go out and talk to the public about things like this when I don't fully understand the question, or I don't have a whole lot of experience with it. So the first thing I would do is make sure that I'm talking to you. I think some of the things that are most important about this question are the questions that need to be asked. What's the size of the lot? What's the location of the lot? What's the use of the property? How big is the buffer between the property that needs multiple wells and the properties that are surrounding it? I think it's most important to involve the residents. I know that there's, I don't support the state monitoring our water. So I think this all need, anything we need to report on this or be involved with each other on these situations needs to be local, that the state government doesn't need to be involved in regulating our water. We own it. But I think it's important to involve the residents around. So I know that there's a wine grow where they're using all of the water of the surrounding residents. And this was allowed because the conversation was not about how this was going to affect the residents, but whether or not the guy that wanted to do this was a good guy. We need to have the right conversations. We need to make sure we're having the right conversations. We need to make sure that the residents who are surrounding the situation need to be heard, involved, and the right questions are being asked, and that we're not doing, any good old boy stuff. So I think if that's what's going on in any situation, that needs to change.
Thank you. Anna, your question was, how important is it for the county's support of the Williamson Act?
So I'm not fully versed in the, sorry, I got distracted by the lights. Shiny. I'm not fully versed in the Williamson Act. What I read on it started in 1965. There was something added to it in 2010. My understanding of the brief synopsis that I read of it is people with a lot of land, especially in this county, are people that are in this room that are farmers and ranchers, and that land feeds a big portion of the world. And I think that on the surface it sounds great. I do not understand all the intricacies of the act and the addition that was done in 2010. I do think that the county supporting that is integral, if I'm understanding it correctly, that it is a support for our ranchers and our farmers to help them be able to do what their life's work is. And part of what makes our county the amazing county it is the people that are here, the people that support it, the people that are feeding the world, but also taking care of this county and keeping it full of the rural lifestyle and history that it has. My concern would be understanding the original 1965 Act and the 2010 addition, and anything, because there's a lot of additions coming up to ranching and farming and land use and the things that my fellow panel members have talked about tonight. My concern as a farmer is what rules are going to be attached to any additions we make, what paperwork is going to be required, what things are going to get, what are we going to have to monitor, what are we going to have to report to the state. So I would need to educate myself more on that. Initially, sounds great, and it needs to be kept. Any supports need to be kept in line to help with property taxes and help to maintain that for landowners. So that is the long and short.
Thank you. Okay, Autumn, we had number 7 for you. What is your position on the greenhouse gas reduction plan pertaining to increased crop production efficiency and soil health, grazing, implementation of livestock manure management strategies, manure management, and reducing methane emissions from livestock?
My position is I don't like it. As a small-scale rancher myself, my kids are doing a swine breeding project this year, and we just had to go through Prop 12 certification. So we had a guy come to our farm and tell us how we're supposed to be raising our pigs who has never raised a pig. So, you know, we passed, we did it, we did all the things, and now, you know, the scary thing was the ripple effect it could have had at our county fair and other fairs. It all worked out, and they're taking their breeding project to fair, and but you know, so it's regulations like this. I think they need to be applied realistically. I think that collaborations with ranchers and farmers need to happen. I don't think it can be looked at through a urban lens. We need to hold those at the top accountable to look at us through a rural lens and recognize that what we're doing is specific to our area and our industry. We're feeding the world, and so we need our quads, and we need our trucks, and we need our cows. And you know, manure is soil management. Manure feeds the land, and if you are, you know, rotating your cattle and using your land efficiently, you're making it beautiful. We have some really rough clay areas at our property where we've concentrated the cows, and it's growing beautifully and it's doing well. So, you know, I hope that they see that and recognize that we know what we're doing here. You know, I think that we need to hold the elected officials responsible. If there is the legislative regulations coming down, you know, we do need to be proactive. We do need to get ahead of it and make sure we're advocating and having them, you know, provide us with the correct pathways and not just sticking it to us. And as elected officials, that's our job, to advocate for you, to talk to you, and to take it up and make sure things are being looked at correctly.
Okay, Trevor, up again. At number 14, more needs to be done to promote vegetation management. What does that look like to you, and how would you implement it?
So I agree that more needs to be done with vegetation management. Specifically, the Board of Supervisors can work with local producers, can work with the Fire Safe Council, can work with the RCD, the Resource Conservation District, to try and figure out ways to do more land management that involves not just prescriptive burning, but also prescriptive grazing. SB 675 was recently passed, and this expanded the availability of grant funding for local prescriptive grazing. Essentially, it's going to treat grazing similar to the way that they do prescriptive burns to clear out fire fuel loads. We can graze instead of just burning all the time, or even better, we can burn it and then we can graze it, so that we can take both of these approaches to making sure that we can get the underbrush out, we can get the grasslands and the rangelands back, and get cattle, goats, or other animals onto that and turn it into working lands, and get funding from the state and the federal government, ideally, to help support these efforts. In addition to working with the Fire Safe Council and local ranchers, we can add a livestock grazing as part of a long-term maintenance program along fuel breaks and fuel reduction projects. I spoke with Pat McGreevy, who's done a lot of work on the fuel breaks up on Highway 26 and on Highway 4. He's talked about how the next program he's going to be working on is specifically a long-term maintenance program. They've gone through by 2028, they hope to have 20,000 acres under management, cleared out, and then they want to do the long-term maintenance plan that makes it so that we keep those 20,000 acres under management and cleared, particularly in the upcountry, so that West Point and Arnold are protected. In addition to that, I understand that there are state and federal environmental regulations that will complicate these efforts and create roadblocks. I know that getting onto BLM land is a big hassle for everybody. But one of the programs that they're looking to create is the opportunity for ranchers and different livestock managers to get out onto BLM lands and expand the area and the ground that you're able to graze and work on. So part of that is getting the funding from the state and the federal government to provide the fencing and support local ranchers and their ability to access these allotments. So those are different things that we can do to try and help overcome these issues. I know there's also there's issues with the Air Quality Control Board, and I know different ranchers have had issues where they've gone and they've done the different clearing and they've tried to make it so that they could do a prescriptive burn, but then been told that after they've spent all the money creating the fire breaks, getting ready for the controlled prescriptive burn, that they're not able to burn because of air quality control concerns. I think we need them to understand the importance of, yeah.
Michelle, next question for you was, what measures would you take or be taken to help the public with trespass and destruction of property brought on by the unhoused community?
Well, I think private property is a key right, and you have the right to protect your property. And I'm not sure that there have to be different measures for the unhoused versus the housed. I think destruction of property by anybody is unacceptable. And so whatever measures need to be taken. I mean, we have issues where we've had RVs parked on the side of the road, people living on them and dumping sewage into the street, here even in San Andreas. And I'm sure there are things happening in areas that are further away, properties being damaged by unhoused, and that needs to be addressed. We need to have the sheriff go out, and we need to implement vacancy laws, and we also need to make sure that the unhoused have access to whatever programs we do have available so that they don't need to be living in someone's back 40. But meanwhile, property rights need to be protected regardless of who is intruding on them, whether it's housed or unhoused people.
Thank you. Gary, number 4, what's currently being done, or what would you do to ensure that well test reports are being submitted by the cannabis permit holders having more than one well? Required by their ordinance, it says that those wells need to be tested.
Yeah, this was part of the cannabis ordinance when we put it in, and I wanted their wells to be tested independently at least 4 times a year because of the amount of draw that everybody had concerns on, the amount of draw of the water and their surrounding neighbors, because some of them are very small lots, and I think 20 acres is what they're allowed to be on. And near where I live, there's a lot of people around there, and those wells, they're all on wells, they're not serviced by a public utilities district. So I would like to see them tested at least independently 4 times. They are supposed to be at least a couple times a year, and if there shows anything in those tests that show chemicals or a reduction in the level, they're supposed to be tested even more than that, and remediated if there are some chemicals that show up because of what they're putting on it or what they're doing with it. So I support that 100%. And I would like to, again, it's asking what would I do? If I had it within me, I would have it 4 times a year, once a quarter, tested. Again, Title 17 is coming to us. This may be part of a conversation that when we have Title 17 come to us after it's gone through the Planning Commission, because this is part of that Title 17 and what you can do online. I would also like to, I think one of the other questions here, going forward, we can't do anything about what's in place now, but I would like to see going forward any new permits that you'd have to have at least on 100 acres and a certain area away from housing that we have some of them going on in my district right now that I get complaints on all the time, especially come September or October. But yes, I'm in favor of enforcing the wells and even going a little step further, which I said when the ordinance came before us.
Thank you, Gary. Appreciate that. Cheryl, your next question was, what would your position be on supporting the Rural Crime Division of the Sheriff's Department, and how would you help secure funding?
I absolutely support the Rural Crime Division of the Sheriff's Department to protect farms and ranches. How I would secure funding, that's a little complicated. Stay with me here for a second. The county is putting together an ad hoc committee, and they're about to take cannabis and treat it as just another industry, like the winery industry. They're going to be discussing tourism opportunities. My district is the red-headed stepchild of the county, financially. So at one time, back during, when all the ordinances were put in place and we were generating tax revenue, started generating tax revenue, which Trevor talks about. Some of that money was supposed to go towards the sheriff's office, and I've spoken with the sheriff's office and he didn't see any of it. So I think that as we move forward with discussing tourism opportunities for the cannabis industry, that this money can go to funding, the tourism dollars go to sheriff, fire, roads, the Visitors Bureau. Now, the other side of this is, and I understand why politicians sound like we're talking out of both sides of our mouth, because, the Constitution talks about peaceful enjoyment of our properties, and that's absolutely critical. So if we're going to be taking this industry as an industry up, I think that the growers need to be professional. They need to be protecting contributing to their communities, protecting their neighbors, and if they're not, they should not be allowed to be involved in the tourism opportunities, or their licenses should be censored in some way until they are in compliance with taking care of their neighbors. So I think that this unusual thing that the county is about to do, and it's becoming a thing statewide. And Calaveras is one of the top 3 cannabis producers in the world, and 50% of those grows are in District 2. So am I for cannabis? No. Am I a capitalist? You're darn right. And if they're going to start making this into a tourism industry, I think we ought to be on the front end of making money off of it and give it to our sheriff to help protect our rural population. Thank you.
Anna, do you have a background in farming and ranching? Please explain.
I do. Thank you for that lovely question. So I grew up, my dad was a foreman of a turkey ranch, and I came home from the hospital to the house on the turkey ranch on J59 outside of Jamestown. As I said earlier, I grew up with my grandparents we grew goats, and I didn't know at the time we ate them, but we grew goats and had all sorts of animals. And my grandpa used to have people come. Actually, when they lived in this county, Roy Rogers came and went bear hunting with my grandpa. It was a side job he had. But I grew up understanding the changing of the environment. When I was 10 years old, things were changing for my grandpa. He had more difficulty helping the ranchers and helping the farmers working in the valley to eradicate coyotes that were chewing on water spigots and ruining orchards and ruining water systems. I grew up hearing this. It didn't really register with me until I became a winery and a vineyard owner, and understanding the paperwork that goes along with that. And as the world tries to be nicer to the environment, they're not nicer to the people who are growing things and the people who own land and the people who need to run their business. We have a small business. We have had a tasting room in the past. And those changes happen, and then we're all affected, and we have to roll with the punches. Or not, or we have to stand up and we have to be loud and we have to say, this is a lifestyle that's important to us, and we're not gonna let this happen without a fight. So I've grown up hearing about it. I have been around cattle ranchers my whole life. One of the last cattle drives in California stops at my grandparents' property every year, twice a year in Mariposa County. It's so important. I'm extremely passionate about it. Don't want to get emotional, but it is worth fighting for, and I'm hoping that all those experiences will help me to keep our county rural.
Thank you. Okay, on number 13, we had the cannabis ordinance needs updating. Are you in favor of expansion and promotion or tighter regulations?
So I'm going to first just give a little history on my experience. I've told you all where I live, so I was in the very heart of the green rush that followed the Butte fire, and we experienced the good, the bad, and the ugly very firsthand. We were next door to a triple homicide on a grow. We had fires started on grows. We've had the dogs chasing our cattle. All the things, wild, wild west. Generators running 24/7 to pump wells and to tanks. So it was very raw for me at that time. I feel like where it is now is in a pretty good place. There's a lot of the commercial growers that are being very responsible and very ethical and doing a great job. I would have to talk with them and the community more, but from what I hear and see, I don't know that there's that much room for expansion. It seems their market is a little bit topped out in this area. I think that similarly to a lot of voices, we do need to maintain relationships with our neighbors and be respectful. And it is rough in September and October for some people. And, you know, somewhat the culture that is drawn can be problematic if you're shopping in Senders and experiencing some of the culture that comes to help during harvest season. I'm soon to have a 16-year-old driving the roads up and down Mountain Ranch Road and Ridge Road and Highway 26. And it's a little rough that time of year with people flying up and down the roads. So I think there might be some room for regulation and maybe some room for expansion. It's something that we as a community would have to talk about as landowners, as the growers, as parents specifically, and make sure it's balanced and equitable.
Thank you. Well, Gary, you get an extra one being your opponent didn't make it. So we had number 6 for you, your position on the greenhouse gas reduction plan. I don't know if you've seen it yet or not. It's probably in the planning commission pertaining to the decarbonization of off-road vehicles. Kind of a scary deal.
Yeah, we talked about it at the board a little bit, and this particular thing, I'm not in agreement with what the state says on this. Especially the farm and Cattlemen's Association, you guys need to get out there. If you're on an electric vehicle and you've got to chase cattle, or you've got a pregnant cow out there that needs help, and you get out there and you got to go uphill, and we all know those electric vehicles going uphill take the charge really quick, and you get stuck out there in an electric vehicle because you're required by state, you're stuck. It's not going to work. You need a vehicle that you can get where you need to get and do what you need to do, as you always have. So I don't think these are the major polluters here in the States. I think that even the Caltrans, there was a COG meeting last night on COG, and Caltrans came and said the federal government gave California $300 million for charging stations in the state, and he equated that to 300. Only 300 out of that amount of money that they could put in. And so I did some quick math to him, and I told him real quick, well, there's 58 counties. That means it equals about 5 per county that you're going to be putting these in. And I told him that COG would have a discussion on it and let them know where we want our 5 put, because it's very critical right now on where these things are going to have to go if we even get 5. I have an idea that the larger cities and counties are going to probably get most of them, and as usual, we'll be the ones that have to wait or deal with it ourselves, which is part of what always has to do with the state and rural counties. But I'm not in favor of it. I would like to keep just what we have because I know how critical it is to a lot of people. I mean, if it's just recreational or something like that, it's not as critical to the people that use them for a living and need to be able to get to where they need to get and back from where they need to get really quick and not have to worry about you have enough charge in your vehicle or not. So that's where I'm at.
Thank you. I think I'm gonna do a little different. Instead of having you guys elaborate on all of them, we're in good shape for time. I'm gonna go ahead and take a few questions from somebody out here that may want to ask me something, if that's okay. Be professional. Please don't.
I have a question myself.
Sure.
Are we going to have time to elaborate on some of the questions we didn't
Yeah, I
ask?
think so. That's I figured we'll get a few questions here and we'll let you guys do that. Yes. So anybody got a question? Lori.
So ranches, as you know, are multi-generational, and that's important to our lifestyle. And so my personal experience is we wanted to put another home, which the Ag Commission said, yes, there's not a problem. We went and talked to the planning department, and it was $20,000 for a stick build in just permits. Something's got to change. If you want to keep our best and our brightest and keep the next generation here, we need to do something about our housing prices, and ADUs are big everywhere, but we're not giving people any incentive to build one because it's $20,000 in permits for a stick build, $10,000 for a modular. That's a lot of money, and that's a lot of money for, you know, our people, our kids that we want to pass our ranches down to someday, right? So what would you do to support the building of ADUs and to try to curb some of those fees that are associated with them?
Who do you want to ask that to? Or who wants to answer it?
I'll answer it. I don't care. And thank you for asking that, Lori. I think it's an important question. I haven't seen the planning department's fee schedule. I think they're due for a fee schedule right now for us to look at what they're charging and how they're charging it. And I think there are some reductions on certain areas of the ADUs that, depending on if it's you're over 65, you get some reduction. If it's for your mother and father-in-law, for them to move in. If it's an ADU for rental or for whatever else, I think they could be exorbitant. I've heard that. So I think that fee schedule is supposed to be coming sometime this year, and I will certainly look at that because I don't disagree with you 100% at all. And I think you're right on. We need to make it easier, and it would be affordable housing for people in our county, and not only your children, all of our children, our grandchildren. So I will keep that in mind and look at it when it comes before the board, because I know it's supposed to come, I believe, this year. Okay. Same way with building, their fee schedule is supposed to come to us too.
Thank you, Gary. Did you want to
Hi, I spoke with Doug Oliver, and one of the things that he said about any time we're building, whether it's additional units on an existing property or building, is the state requires road improvements in 2 miles in each direction of this in order to accommodate the new dwelling, whether it's one or multiple dwellings. And the county actually works to decrease that so that you only have to improve the road for a much smaller section in order to, you know, make these fees less. However, our tourism dollars, and whether it's, you know, through any kind of tourism, just increasing, you know, things that are going on in Murphy, adventure tourism is being looked into. By increasing our tourism dollars, which is the second largest revenue source in our county, first being government, we could be, you know, putting some of this money towards our roads, which could, you know, if it's already taken care of, then it's not going to be included in your fees. Just a thought.
Anybody else have a question?
David, I think Trevor wanted to answer
Yeah, go ahead, Jared.
One thing that I wanted to mention was that Doug Oliver's worked on some pre-approved templates for different types of building plans, and that's something that I think needs to be expanded to different ADUs and giving multiple different models so that people have some already on at the county offices. They have plans that have been pre-approved and everybody can use them at all the different places, and it reduces the fees and the turnaround time in terms of how long it will take to get your plans approved, because one of the big problems for construction is getting plan check done. And so if there are plans that are already on the books, that they are already pre-approved, this is something that can help speed up and reduce the cost.
You can make it faster, but it doesn't make it cheaper.
Trevor's absolutely right. There are a set of 3 buildings that you can get. It makes it faster, and the permits a little bit cheaper, but it's not the question she had about planning, and this not having to do with planning and the cost just get in to be able to approve through planning. But you are right, absolutely correct. There are 3 that. And they're really small. I think each one of them are under 1,100 square feet. I think one of them's 9. So
I've heard you all say you want to keep the rural lifestyle. So if you want to keep that and you want to keep our best and brightest here, you need to figure out our housing issues.
I agree.
Thank you.
I think that's a big issue.
Anybody else have any questions?
Thank you. My name is CJ Singh. My question is kind of along the lines of housing, but also workforce development. We live in a community where we've kind of become a training ground for pretty much any employment, whether that's law enforcement, health and human services, or anything anywhere. How do you guys plan on retaining those amazing staff members that come here for 1 or 2 years and then end up moving on to another place because there's higher pay or affordable living? So my question is, again, how do we retain staff within the county to stay here and work and live here? Anybody can answer.
Just working with some of these people that are leaving, a lot of them understand that our wages may not always be equivalent with neighboring areas that have a much higher income. But what we can do is enrich what else we have to offer, creating more housing, making it available. At First 5, well actually the Calaveras Child Care Council that I'm a part of, we proposed free child care to some of the big employers in this county, be it the county, be it the hospitals, and look at doing stuff like that where maybe our employees have free child care, have certain benefits that make it better to live here. Because we can't necessarily match all the salaries of neighboring areas, but we can offer a lot more incentives to make them want to stay.
I think that I agree with your point. I was just at a meeting where we were talking about the differences of the fire districts regarding Measure A and going through some of the numbers on that. And I think a bigger part of that is what we do in general for businesses, small businesses, large businesses, law enforcement. I think as a county, there needs to be conversation, different conversation. There needs to be different conversation to find solutions. And I'm not talking about solutions from, more government. I'm talking about who we are, looking at who we are, what we have to offer. My husband and I opened a tasting room here in town in 2009. We were open for a year. We ran into a lot of roadblocks. A lot of information wasn't shared, and it was very difficult. My husband bought the property and started the winery in 1997, 98. I was, no, is that right? In 90, because I was still in elementary school. And he moved up here during that time, and he's been growing it. So he's been here for a really long time. Nobody knew it. He's a quiet guy. We bonded the winery when we got married, 2001, and we've been working on what's next. How do you have a small business? How do you connect with the businesses? How do you connect with the people? And we need to have new conversations. We need new eyes, we need new conversations, we need people that come with different experience to take the rural lifestyle that we have and take moving into the future in an appropriate way and have those conversations. I don't have specific answers, but I think communication and conversation is a really good place to start.
As far as housing is concerned, I think there are some possible options. I think that mini housing is a good idea, a way to go with things. I think what you said about roadblocks is a pretty big issue. We, as a county, need a better, more cohesive plan for permitting processes so that things are streamlined and are routed to all the same people. There seems to be sort of a piecemeal process where one department sees it and then another department sees it and then this other department didn't see it, but they find it later when someone else comes in and makes a change, and there's always a big hoopla about it. It's like we as a county don't have a real plan for how to address any kinds of building, changing, business. And we need to increase our revenues in a sustainable manner. We can't expect the state to bail us out. We need to make sure that we grow business, tax-paying business in this county that doesn't compromise the character of our communities, and make sure that they follow the rules. But we want to make sure that those rules make sense, they do what they're supposed to do, and that we apply them in an even-handed way. And maybe that looking at revenue streams can help us and create a situation where there is more opportunity for housing and for workforce.
Hi, my name is Alvin Lamore, and water is necessary for life. And I'd like to know why the CPUD doubled its water rates and just slamming everybody, even the retired people, everybody, farmers, ranchers, everybody. And was there any way to avoid this?
Well, I'm actually a CPUD ratepayer, and I was pretty PO'd about that too. I sat in this room on the other side when that town hall meeting came around. And my estimation is that that happened because the board and the management team did not adequately plan for the future. They let things ride and let things ride, and all of a sudden they've got to do all this work and they've got to take the money out of your pocket because they didn't plan for it in a way that makes sense. And that's something I see at the county level too. The county has a strategic plan. It's called Calaveras County Strategic Plan, 2022 to 2025. That's 3 years. That's not a strategic plan. That's an election cycle plan. And we need, as a board and as a county, to be looking 20 years into the future. And that's what CPUD wasn't doing. And so we need to hold our boards accountable, not just at the county, but at utilities, to make sure that they're keeping our best interests at heart.
Really quick, I just want to say CCWD did the same thing, and they were going to raise our rates 100% over the next 5 years. One of the board members actually suggested that we just raise it for the first 2 years and then wait and see what happens. And we might get more information. There might be more grants. There might be something we could, instead of raising it, you know, making a commitment right this minute to raise it for 5 years. And one of the other board members said, well, we can't do that because we have contractors to pay. Find out who those contractors are for those big projects. That's what I suggest, because one of those board members is a contractor.
Good evening. My question is regarding rural fire protection. So in Calaveras County, our local government fire departments consist of 10 special districts that don't fall under the direct oversight of the county.
Can you speak up just a little bit? I don't know.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
All right, let's start over. So my question is regarding rural fire protection, specific to local government agencies. The county has 10 special districts that comprise our local government fire departments, but they don't directly work for the county. There's still a relationship there with the county. How specifically would you support those local districts?
Each one of those districts has their own elected board. Each one of them do. And once a board is elected by the people within their districts, the county has nothing to do with it. We tried to, when they didn't get, when they were all formed about 1999, 1998, 99, they were formed by those districts and their income was from property taxes. Unfortunately, back then, each district wasn't equated the same amount of homes. It wasn't by homes, it was by property more or less. So those districts, some of them get very little and some of them get a lot. Some of them have had their homeowners pass some propositions where they would increase their property taxes to pay for it. Ebbets Pass is one of them. Ebbets Pass also has ambulance service. They got into the ambulance service. So they have an annual budget of about almost $5 million. You come down here to Calco, and before they were formed with Foothill, Foothill only had about $250,000 a year. And the other one, Jenny Lynn, had about $600,000 a year. So they merged, so their base income was about $800,000 a year for a larger area than Ebbets Pass covers. So it wasn't set up properly. But when we increased the TOT and we got the vote and we increased the OT, I was one of the leading supervisors that voted, and along with Supervisor Stopper, to give at least a quarter of the TOT income to the fire departments to increase their budgets so that they could cover everything they have to do. People don't, they're the first responders. You have an accident. Anybody has an accident within the county, they're the first ones usually to get there. They're the first one, they have EMTs to help save lives. And then the ambulance service comes. Ambulance service is another issue that's far in between with the number of ambulances we have in the county. But again, we're a rural county. But they are the people that come. You have a fire. During the summertime, your neighbor on a property, you call the fire department as the first ones there to help put that fire out so it doesn't expand and spread on us. They are the ones that, if you have a home fire, you just had one in Wallace last night. They're the ones that show up and they put the fire out. They're the ones that respond, first responders. They are very vital. A sheriff is very vital. The other side of it is the sheriff. The sheriff is funded through the county and a lot of different other propositions and money that the state gives them. But the fire departments, some of them are lacking money-wise to be able to respond and keep up with equipment. And the other coin to that is the state. I want to talk a little bit about the building one, but the state, they keep raising what the requirements are. They keep and you got to stay up with it. You got to keep up with that. And you don't get funding from the state to do that. You just have to do it. So it's a very difficult situation with the fire departments right now. A lot of them. So hope that answers your question.
So yeah, Gary just gave a good background on the history of the fire districts. I know I went up and talked with Jim Carroll, the fire chief up in West Point, or former fire chief up in West Point, and he gave me a lot of that same rundown on why there was a disparate funding for our different districts, why Ebbets Pass is able to, if you look at their budget, it looks like they've got a ton of money, and they do, but that's because of their parcel tax relative to the rest of the county, particularly in District 2. If you look at the budgets of the fire districts in District 2, I believe Altaville is the lowest funded out of all of them, and then the rest of the lowest funded are all in District 2. So it definitely impacts District 2. I've come out, and I know every other candidate in the District 2 race has come out in support of McRae to try and increase funding for the fire districts. It's vital. I personally went through the Butte fire, it burned our property, And so I know the importance of the fire districts and will do whatever I can to support them. I know also, like Gary's saying, they are their own districts. They have their own elected officials and their own oversight. And the role that we as the supervisors need to play is as a supporting role and trying to work with every special district that we have in the county. If it's fire districts, if it's the school districts, whatever it is, we need to have more of a integrated approach for every single district and figure out how we can work together to make sure that we don't have the utility districts raising rates on people because we don't have a long-term strategic plan for how we're going to maintain our infrastructure. And that's how I'd approach my partnership with every other special district in the county.
So one of the things I found in accounting and in government is sometimes we're held behind a veil of language, and I didn't know what TOT was, and it stands for Transient Occupancy Tax, and it represents tourism revenue. And it can be used, and I learned this from Gary a couple of nights ago, that it can be used for other things other than sheriff, fire, roads, and visitor bureau. But I think it's critical that we keep those funds towards critical services as much as possible. I live in West Point, Wilseyville. Another thing that a lot of folks don't realize is that Cal Fire leaves. They leave their stations. They cut their staff and equipment in half starting in November, and by December they leave for the season, and they're gone until May. So our volunteer fire department is all we have. And in West Point, Wilseyville, we have an average age of 61, and we can become landlocked very quickly and easily under many circumstances with our roads and weather. I've been speaking to the District 2 supervisor in Mariposa, and like Gary was saying, the educational requirements were increased recently. And what happened to Mariposa County is the volunteers didn't want to pay the $250,000 for the increase in that education, and the county didn't want to pay it. So now Mariposa County pays $2.5 million to Cal Fire every year to take care of their fire needs. So it's critical that we maintain our fire departments. Tuolumne County also doesn't have a volunteer fire department. They also pay Cal Fire. So we're very lucky to have our volunteer fire department, and I feel we should do everything that we can to support them. Thank you.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I spoke with my sister last night, who works for the U.S. Forest Service, to get a better feel for what was going on in the county and this information that I was filling my head. And sadly, this is a nationwide issue, that fire departments are funded differently everywhere, and that we have many in our county that are not being offered insurance. They have no retirement plan. They're not, I was flabbergasted. I thought, oh, of course, they're fire people. Of course, they're part of PERS. They're gonna pay in and they're gonna have it. No, that is not the case. Each district is different. So, number one thing to answer your question is everybody in this county needs to understand their first responders, what they go through, the training. The training needs just to be a volunteer. And, how do we keep them here, as we were talked about in a previous question. So there's so many different layers. I made notes. So we're canceled. Our fire insurance was canceled by the fair plan, the unfair plan. We did all the things, and so they canceled us. I didn't even think that was a thing, that they could do that, but they can't, just because the wind blows. Many people in this county are losing their fire insurance. They're cutting down all the trees that the insurance tells them to do, and then they still lose their insurance, or they have to get some other kind of insurance that's triple, quadruple the amount that they ever had to pay before. We have a higher need for our fire departments than we probably have ever had before. And I have a obscene amount of respect for procedures and for the Constitution, on the nation level, and for the Board of Supervisors and what they represent. And I think it is so imperative going forward, whoever ends up at that bench and on that board, we need to look for new solutions. We need to have conversations about how we can help get our volunteers paid training, how we can work that out. Our 10 special districts know their needs of their people that they take care of. We need to support them in that. Do we want, anybody want more taxes? No, probably not. So what do we look at? We look at the budget. We look at that and we really sift through it and we ask hard questions of ourselves and each other. Where's this funding going to come from? And hard questions where it's hard to look your neighbor in the eye because nobody wants to ask that question, but it has to happen because nobody wants Butte Fire again. Nobody wants those experiences. Has to happen.
Unless there's no burning questions out there, we'll go ahead. Well,
I just want to say, to kind of circle back to that, as a board, I think what we can do is advocate, advocate, advocate for all of our central districts. We can make sure that they are getting help. I know there is some stuff the county helps with as far as maintenance of vehicles, that sort of thing. And one problem I've heard from a couple of the chiefs at these local districts is the retention, just like at the county. And I said, well, you know, this was specifically in West Point. I said, what about some of these 17, 18-year-old boys? Why are we not, you know, working harder to kind of bring back coming in from the high school and training and kind of feeling it out, see if some of these young men and women would like a future in fire. So he was really into that. I've already reeled in a couple of country kids that I know that are like, yeah, that might be really neat. And if they could work through the high school, kind of a work-study program, and then just advocating, making sure they have a relationship with CAL FIRE, making sure they have a relationship with RCDC, all the different things to help them get what they need.
there's no burning questions out there. We'll go ahead and have you, oh, you on?
Can I ask one question?
Sure.
I don't think I need a mic.
Okay, go ahead.
With California going where it's going, and I'm working very hard to start a company, and I won't get into the deal of its relevance to this county, how are you guys going to find a way to attract prominent companies to do business in Calaveras County, and why?
Calaveras County is 20 years behind economically, everything behind it. A decision was made quite some time ago to keep us rural. And while there is beauty and honor in that, there has to be some balance. We need, in order to honor that, we need low impact, high yield revenue sources. I was talking to a young person in San Andreas that has a business, and they graduated Calaveras High. And he told me his work history, which took him in and out of the county, struggling after high school. He was lucky enough to get a job at a company that he ended up being lucky enough to purchase. And he was telling me about the struggles of just young people here. And he literally said to me this: the reason we're having this problem is because of legacy names. It is his opinion, as Anna has said, we need new ideas. We need new people in those seats. And that's the opinion of some of the people who are living here, is that we have the same old ideas from, you know, the same old families over and over again, who are having a harder time thinking outside of the box about what it means to keep this place rural while at the same time inviting industry. I've had people talk to me about bringing an Amazon distribution center, or building a hotel in Ironstone. You know, there's a lot of different things that can be done. the cannabis tourism industry. You know, it's a thing, it's happening. I think we really need to be open-minded and start looking for ways to grow without putting a Walmart on every corner. I appreciate you.
Yeah, I think one of the things about living in this area is that business is considered a dirty word by many, because we don't want to give up what's beautiful and what's historic in our county. But the fact is that we're not a terminal lake. Money doesn't just flow into here from outside. The money has to be generated here. We can use one-time grants from the state or the Fed to do infrastructure projects, but to do operation and maintenance of infrastructure or implementing programs, we need to have consistent, sustainable revenue streams that come from here. And if the property owners aren't going to be paying that bill, and we can't afford to, we need to bring business in, businesses that pay taxes in this county. And I'm not sure exactly what they look like, but we need to keep our minds open, we need to be questioning, and we need to be at least thinking about it, not just say no because it's business and it's from outside. We need to have that money generated to do the things we want to do. It's just that simple. And as far as legacy names, I think there is some concern about that. I think I have heard stories that some businesses get special treatment because they know somebody or said something to someone. And I think the thing is that we need to make sure that the rules that we have are actually applied to everybody, regardless of who you know or who you're related to. And that can help as well. But we need to just bring some money into this county by encouraging business, whatever that looks like.
I think that we should lean into what we're good at and what we have and what we've done traditionally. I think that there are a lot of legacy names that have built this county and built this community. I grew up on Hopper Ranch, and Hopper Road to me means a lot. That's something that I wouldn't want to see erased from our history, and I want to keep multi-generational families here working in this community. So I think that we should continue to encourage all the families that we have in our community to stay here, to be a part of this community and help us build traditions and legacies that move on for generations to come. I want my kids to stay here and their kids to stay here. And I want the Whitkey name to someday be a legacy name here in this community. So it's not that the legacy names are a problem in our community. They're one of the strengths that we've got. And I'll work with everybody, newcomers, people who've been here forever. I think that we have to maintain a stable environment that is friendly for businesses, that doesn't eliminate businesses that come into the community. I think we have to have balance. We can't have a cannabis industry that comes in and overrides the community and displaces legacy families or ruins old properties that have been in our community. I think that I will take the blame and be part of acknowledging that we made mistakes and that there were problems with the way that we did things, but the way that the county took away a lot of people's licenses and eliminated an industry sent a bad message. And while I don't think we should ever go back to this boom and bust cycle that we've had historically in terms of, you know, the real estate boom's gonna save us or cannabis is gonna save us. That's no one thing is gonna save us. But being friendly for the business community, showing that we will respect property rights, that people get to come here, start up, sow their seeds, and build a family tradition is something that we can do. And that's where I see our strength, and that's something that I will continue to support and work for with anybody that I can in whatever capacity.
I think you hit it right on the head, your comment and your question. The state of California. I think we need to focus on the industries that we can use here in our county, much like the meat processing plant that we were discussing earlier. But as it was said, the regulations by the state, how long it's going to take, all the ecological things that need to be done. The state just keeps pouring more and more and more on us, and we have no control over it. Yes, we can reach out and we can do what we can to get business here. I'm working with business owners right now. Yes, we can change some zoning for them. We can accommodate them in any way that we can. We can maybe reduce permits fees. We can help them, but we can't control the state and what the state does and what their requirements are. It's just getting, I mean, we're talking about greenhouse gas and cattle emissions. They're wanting to regulate that. I mean, it's just crazy what the state is going through. And you're right, California, and a lot of businesses are streaming out of here because of the regulations and the requirements of the state of California. I'm not putting it all on them, but I'm saying that, yes, we can. The last business was here that was sustainable, and we had a lot of people working, the cement plant.
That's right.
But that's been years ago. They left. They left us, and there was nothing done to bring anything back in because there wasn't a whole lot of regulations that you have now back then. And the same thing, you go to Amador. The Amador, the mills shut down. What did they do? They brought in Walmart, and they had a Kmart there for a while and things like that. But that's back. Now, in order to build something like that, the regulations by the state of California are just crazy. And I think that's what you're going to see is a lot as it gets tougher and tougher and tougher. I mean, we were talking about greenhouse gas earlier, about the smaller vehicles for the off-road vehicles. I mean, I don't see them as major polluters, and I think those are vital to run a business. And I think those are some of the types of business that we need to get in here. We already have some, but what we can use here is what we need to try and get in here. And we can work around anything that we need to, but we can't work around the state of California and their regulations. It's just the way it is.
I'm going to make one real quick comment. Talk about legacy. My family's one of the legacies here in Calaveras County. Many out here are. And you need to realize the supervisors are going to be supervisors. That what you guys make decision-wise does affect us. And if we go out of business, you're not going to have what you like out there. This county's going to look a lot different, and that's why we need you guys to look at what's affecting us as farmers and ranchers. That's why we have this here tonight. And like I said, there's many, many people out here that the families are multi-generation. So it's not the legacy we get a favor because we've been here a long time, but we do want you to look at what you make a decision on that affects us.
I would like to speak to that. And it was one of the questions that was on our questions we had tonight, and it had to do with the Williams Act. And during the recession that I talked about earlier, the state of California defunded the Williamson Act. They put it on the counties. Before, what the Williamson Act is a tax reduction for the number of acres. You have to have at least 100 acres to be able to get into the program. And we still accept them. Even though the state does not fund them, we accept them all the time. And we took the reduction. So we did not do away in this county with the Williamson Act, and I was part of that, voting to do that, and this came up before, and I will not vote to get rid of the Williamson Act. I think it's vital to your industry that that stays the way it is. And we will just suck it up here in the county for that, because I think what you do provides more tax than what that will bring into us. But that is one of the things, again, the state of California. There was talk about, after the recession going into about 2016, 2017, the state was talking about refunding it, or part of it, but that never happened. So we still fund, as a county, the Williamson Act, the property, the Farm Bureau, and Cattlemen's Association and other people utilize because it is vital to this county. And then one of the other questions I wanted to talk about a little bit that was on here says, do you have any background in farming and ranching? I live on 6 acres, and yes, I had horses, and I had a couple head of cattle at one time, and some other things. But I moved here in 1991, and directly across from my house, directly across, I don't know if anybody remembers Phil and Hazel Kane. If you're a longtime family here and you're down, you know Phil and Hazel Kane. Phil was a very cantankerous kind of guy. He lets you know what he thought without any doubts in his mind. And Hazel kind of was, but after Phil passed away, she changed a little bit, and we became very good friends. But mine is dealing with them, because I would go out and help her. They get cattle stuck, heads in the fence or whatever, helping her repair some of the fences after Phil's gone. So I do have some experience in farming, and you guys are great, and you're vital to this county.
I don't consider myself a legacy, but I consider myself very rooted here. I have lots of family and friends in other states that, say, why don't you come join us? And we're not leaving. My husband works for the state for one thing, and we live on our family property, and my piece of property is family to me. We won't leave it, and I think that the culture of Calaveras County is, it's always hanging one election cycle, one generation away from becoming more like the big California around it. And so I will stay here and fight for that. And I don't know what your business is, but we need business. So I think that looking at any way to make permitting easier, land use easier, I would be in favor for and work towards, and just continue keeping it to where businesses want to come and want to build and want to be here.
Did you want to reply to one of the questions? Because we kind of already started that, so do you want to reply to one of the questions already, or do you have anything to add or closing?
Yeah, I could just kind of give my closing. That's moving into that. Yeah, okay. Covered a lot of it. Just to reiterate, if elected, I will continue to be present daily. My priorities will grow and change as I get to know all of you and learn how you would like me to serve you. I'm running as one of you. I'm running as a lifelong community member. I'm running with knowledge and experience stretching beyond multiple industries. I have a unique ability to build relationships and connections and to solve complicated issues. I believe that in District 2, we can bring people together in a more productive way and get a lot more projects completed. While all of our existing plans serve as goals and guidelines, we have to be receptive to change. We have to continue working, looking at our objectives, make sure they're relevant and reflective, and that's done with the people. If elected, I would like to have community meetings on a regular basis, town halls, regular office hours, and just being present, because it's your ideas and your goals that should be driving the Board of Supervisors. As I said in my opening, I hope that you will recognize my years of experience. I hope it resonates with you. Know that I will always advocate, always volunteer, always be present. I will no longer have my current job, and that will be my one full-time job, and I take that very seriously. I'm an incredibly hard worker, and I will work for all of you. I encourage you to contact me anytime. I'm happy to answer questions, have a meal, go over what you would like me to be focusing on. I appreciate your vote on March 5th, and appreciate all of you. Thank you.
Many years ago, I found myself on the board of the Resource Connection. I had been invited to be a liaison to the Parent Policy Council for Head Start. And so I went and I sat on these board meetings and they're going over these budgets. And the Resource Connection, if you're not familiar with them, They have WIC in 2 counties, Head Start in this county, the Resource Connection, Food Bank, the Crisis Center, and Child Care Resources. They are started as a grassroots organization years and years ago, and they serve the people. Your neighbors are probably involved with them. And I had the pleasure of being nominated by Michael Kryletich to take over as the chair when he was going to retire from that position. And I was speechless because I'm like, I love coming to these meetings, but how can I possibly help to lead this organization? And he had a lot of faith in me, and it helped me to become a better person. And I learned to ask those hard questions that I talked about earlier. They aren't lovely questions, they aren't friendly questions, they aren't questions that make anybody want to ask you out to coffee, but they get things done, and they serve people. Direct services, how does the money that we are voting on right now, how does that affect someone I'm going to see in the grocery store? And this position is a bigger part of that, and I'm ready to ask those questions. I'm ready to be part of that. I dug through federal grants, which have huge rules connected to them, state grants, which have slightly less, but a lot of rules. The main thing is, how are we serving the people that we drive by, that we work with, that we sit in church with, that we go to meetings with? How are those dollars, and how is this vote going to affect those people? I think that's important, and I think it's important to tell the people that I see at the grocery store during the meetings what we voted on. I really would like to be a voice for ag, for the rural community. I consider myself a realistic conservative because sometimes you have to be realistic and you have to talk to the people on the other side of the aisle. So follow your heart. Vote where you think you want your voice.
Well, repeating that young man's words sure got things riled. Can you hear me now? Yeah. Repeating that young man's words definitely got things riled. So let me take a minute and tell you what I understood him to say. One of the reasons that I started running is because I have some people in my town who are connected, have money, influence, etc., who are pushing through their agenda in a very small town. And I've met with the lady, and I respect and honor that that woman knows more, has forgotten more about that town than I will ever know. I moved around a lot as a kid, so being able to be a part of a community and have a home is incredibly precious to me. And that probably says a lot more about the community than it says about me. I've spent my time getting to know the people in my community, serving them by keeping them informed about emergencies. I'm a scanner jockey and a ham radio operator, and you will find me daily informing my community about emergencies, fires, etc., so that they can make good decisions. I recognize and honor your history here. I think one of the most important things about the Brown Act, one of the most important words that I read in that statement is servants. The people on that board are servants. And I would be serving my community in a way that the county, in a way that I've been honored to help serve my community. Making sure everyone has good information to make good decisions that are right for you. Because what might be a good decision for you might not be a good decision for you. And you need to have the information that you need to be able to make those decisions and have your voices heard. Whether I agree with you or not doesn't matter. I love my communities enough that how I feel about something isn't anywhere near as important about what's best for my community. Which is why I'm open to listening to ideas and thoughts and your hearts. And thank you.
Being a supervisor is a full-time job. Not just, you have to be ready when you go there on Tuesday and there's a board meeting. You have to be well schooled. You get the agenda ahead of time. You have to know what you're voting on. You have to know what questions you want to ask. And then the other part of that, you're on other committees. And when I say it's full-time, I would say this, that I was on a phone call with the supervisor from Alpine County that we sit on one committee. We were up till 9:30, 10 o'clock last night talking on the phone. So not only was I all day working as a supervisor, but I was also up till about 10 o'clock last night working as a supervisor. So it is more than a full-time job. It is go all the time. And on top of that, I've been involved for many years in my community. I've been just on the boosters. They do the fireworks over Hogan. I've been involved in that for about 20 years. Friends of the Library, I was on that board in Valley Springs. Friends of the Library, I was on that for many years. I am president of the Valley Springs ABA Association right now. I am in the Rotary Club down there. So part of a supervisor is being out in your community, hearing people. I was just at every crab feed that was going on here in the last, since January. I was at every single one of them, sitting and walking and going around talking to people to hear what they have to say. And that's what you need to do as a supervisor also. Not only the job is hear what people have to say and make it so they're not afraid to come up and ask you or even tell you something they're mad about something. Sometimes I get an earful from somebody because they're mad. And then you try and explain to them why you did what you did because maybe they don't have the full understanding of why. But it is a full-time job. And you have to stay involved in the community. Up here, I worked with Jim Kavanaugh at San Andreas Parks and Recreation on this building. We redid Cononi's Park. I don't know if you've been up there to see that. Just a little park right down here, down the street, Nielsen Park, was neglected for years and years and years. And a discretionary fund, I gave them $10,000 to renovate that park, and it is absolutely beautiful right now. And I am also working with them right now to redo Turner Park and get it back up and going and getting it straightened out and cleaned up. But that's all part of the community. That's all part of what you need to do as a supervisor and stay involved so the people, you see them every day. I go to Marvell to shop. I go to Grocery Outlet to shop. People come up to me because they know me. And that's what you need to do as a supervisor, not only the other part of it and being schooled and knowing what you're voting on and why you're voting it and going there prepared, absolutely prepared on it or any other committee. Because there's a lot of other committees involved in that have agendas that are just as large sometimes as what we deal with here. And next Tuesday, we have a very large one. We could be there all day. But that's part of the supervisor. That's what you do. It's nonstop. You go and you try and stay involved.
Thank you for your time and attention. In my opening statement, I said that addressing the issues Calaveras County faces will require strategic planning, community involvement, and sustainable resources. I spoke a little bit earlier about strategic planning. We need to look 20 years and more out there in the future. We can't look at 3 years and call it a strategic plan. Board of Supervisor meetings are open to the public, and both in person and by Zoom, but there's some restrictions that make it difficult for the public to really participate. You actually have to show up in person if you want to speak in the general comment section, or if you want to pull an item from the consent agenda. You can submit a written statement if you can't be there in person to speak to an item of 300 words or less by email, which goes in, the board sees before the meeting, and it gets put into the minutes. But it's really not the active public participation that should be there. I talked a little bit about sustainable revenues earlier. I mean, you can look for state and federal monies for infrastructure projects, but you need to generate revenues in the county for operation and maintenance, for implementing programs. And we need to be open to looking at different ideas about how we can actually create those revenues. Just so we're clear, I'm here tonight because I'm interviewing for a job. A supervisor's job is to champion the interests of their constituents, to be accessible to the public, available for meetings, phone calls, and community events, responsive to email, text messages, and chance meetings at the hardware store, and I will be available. A supervisor's job is to review and approve the budget, not just rubber stamp it. I will actively review the budget, ask questions, and request revisions before granting approval. A supervisor's job is full-time. It's not possible to meet with constituents, advocate for county interests at the state level, review board packets, prepare for meetings, and while you're working 40 hours doing something else. Holding another job creates conflicts of interest as well, which cripple the board's ability to govern. This will be my full-time job. A supervisor must collaborate with and build consensus among the other supervisors to get anything done. I will work with other supervisors to ensure that Calaveras County is governed in a fair and equitable manner, that constituents are heard and that policies are enacted that make Calaveras a better place to live, work, and thrive. I understand the job. I know how government works. I've been on the board as an elected official for over 10 years, and I have the administrative and financial background necessary to be an effective supervisor. So it would be my honor to serve you should you vote for me on March 5th. I'm Michelle Turner. I'm running for District 2 Supervisor, and I just want to thank you all for being here.
Thank you, Michelle. Thank you, everyone, for coming. I'll try and wrap this up quickly. I know everybody wants to go home. Something that got mentioned was that tourism is the #2 source of revenue for the Calaveras County. I'd like to point out that I believe all tourism in Calaveras County is agricultural tourism, and the reason people come to this community is because of the food we produce, the wine we produce, the open space, the scenery, and the views that they're able to enjoy. And all of that is maintained because of the agricultural community that has made this place what it is. So when people talk about tourism, when they talk about creating businesses and revenue for this community, it all starts with the foundation of agriculture. And if I'm supervisor, I can tell you, I'm not a rancher, I'm not a farmer, but I grew up around some, and I appreciate them. And we have a rich tradition here of farming and ranching that shaped up the place that we all love and call home. And the agricultural community will always have my ear, you'll always have a place at my table, and I respectfully ask for your vote. Thank you all for coming.
Well, I want to thank all of you for getting grilled by us. And appreciate it. So if you'd like to mingle, I'm sure people would like to meet you. There's donuts, cookies, whatever back there, coffee. Thank you all for coming.